All right, so I'm Tim Brown, CEO of IDEO, IDEO, Palo Alto, California.
And the name isn't too hard to spell.
Yeah, you should manage Brown,
So,
B-R-O-W-N.
So Tim, why are you interested in talking about innovation?
Well, funnily enough, certainly, our firm is pretty much all of our time is spent trying to help companies innovate. So, innovation is the subject I suppose I spend most of my time around. What I'm interested in with this particular gathering, though, is trying to understand this sort of classical relationship, or the relationship between this classical sense of innovation, which is R&D based, technically based, and what I'm finding, at least in our world, which is that innovation is coming out of the sort of connections between many more facets of business. So, we already heard a bit this morning about the kind of silent innovation, if you like, in services, in what Jeffrey called customer intimacy, which is all about brands and how we connect to people. I'm interested in this question of diversity of talent, which I think needs to actually be a lot more diverse than people are talking about today. But how do we bring diverse talent from a technological point of view, from a business point of view, from a creative point of view, together and actually have people work effectively together, because it just isn't very easy to do that. So they're the kinds of questions that I'm interested in.
There's been some talk here about the definition of innovation.
I'm sorry, David. Would you mind standing right here instead so I can get your eyes a little bit more?
There's been some talk here about the definition of innovation. Do you feel you know what innovation means?
No, I mean, innovation is something, it's a multifaceted thing. I mean, I suppose at the highest level, this idea of creating new value that has got some relevance to the world is probably what it's about. But once you start to dig into it, you've got to be willing to hold a bunch of different definitions in tension, in my opinion. Otherwise, you end up with a lowest common denominator kind of definition for it, which isn't very useful to anybody.
What do you think that there's a change? You mentioned this whole issue of innovation coming from new places, and I've been reading this book by Clay Shirky, Here Comes Everybody, which really leads me to think innovation is increasingly coming from consumers, from individuals that are making these connections. Do you think about that kind of thing?
Well, I think about it all. I think about where is innovation coming from all the time, and obviously not least because this idea of kind of mass consumer innovation has the potential to significantly disrupt what kind of expert innovators like we do. So obviously one thinks about it. Currently, my point of view is that the most interesting things happen in collaboration between, if you like, consumers and people who are focused on innovation. I think about a model which is the idea that classically companies have innovated for consumers. And then you can imagine, in a more collaborative sense, one can innovate with consumers, and then ultimately the form of innovation you're talking about is innovation by consumers. I think we're definitely in an innovation with consumers phase right now, and I don't know whether it'll ever get to the point where it's so distributed that we can think of essentially the whole world innovating.
Yeah.
One of the issues for me is that the evidence so far is that most of that innovation that's coming from purely consumer-driven stuff is highly incremental.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the next music track or it's the next YouTube video. There's not a lot of evidence there's very much kind of breakthrough stuff happeing until you start to get the collaboration.
As a Facebook book author at the moment, if there's one innovative technology in the world today that's changing the landscape, it's that. It was created by a consumer in a college dorm room.
Well, yeah, consumer. I mean, I think we sort of start to kind of mess up the definitions a little bit about what consumers are. He was a guy in business school in a college dorm room, determined.
Undergraduate.
Determined to set up his own business. Though I mean, that's where entrepreneurs have always come from. So that's not a new idea.
But he wasn't doing it in a big company, which a lot of the discussions here are focused on.
Right, but Larry and Sergey weren't doing it in a big company when they created the Google search engine either.
Right. Okay. Another question. You're a Brit in San Francisco, and a lot of our discussion here is about the geographic cluster issue. What do you feel about, why are you in San Francisco? Why is IDEO here? What are the advantages that you find innovatively to this location? I
mean, the best metaphor I can use is it feels like what it must have been like to be in Florence in the Renaissance, to be in the Valley in the turn of the 21st century. Why would you want to be anywhere else if you're interested in innovation, particularly if you're interested in innovation that's driven by technology? It just feels like a great place to be. And it's got all kinds of other advantages too. It's not that there aren't other great places to innovate, and there are lots of great companies. It's just, it was an easy place to get drawn to. And I think one of the pieces that did get brought up today is that there's just such an incredible support structure for innovation here. It sort of makes it easier. It actually takes a lot of the risk away from innovation to be in a place where all of that support structure is already there.
Is there any one thing you've learned this morning or that have got you thinking about that you are surprised by or excited by?
I think it's more about some things that have been reinforced. I think this idea of that it's about momentum, growth, momentum, and diversity that's really important. I mean, I guess I've always believed that, but it's good to hear that getting proven out at the large scale as they kind of have done this kind of research. I think, Jeffrey's really clear definitions of, the three forms of innovation, customer intimacy, product leadership, and operational excellence. It's a really great model.
Yeah.
It's just very clear, very simple. If you're in an organization, you should be thinking about all those three things.
Great. This is terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome.